right, Brian Fricke, CISO CND, let's go. Welcome to SF, first off.
Thanks, man.
It's insane seeing you. I think everyone would probably like to know how in the world we met, which is wild, actually.
You know what? Why don't you tell the story?
Well, I stalked him on LinkedIn, and then we killed it.
Well, we met in Miami, right? We had some nice food and caught up, and yeah, you were telling me all about dope and all the things you're doing. And I actually had already seen your podcast.
Really?
I'd already seen some of the CISO in cars, and I was like, that's a great idea.
Like, you know, the thing about this thing is they really should make podcasting new equipment a little more expensive.
Well, it's democratized, right? Like the AI and LLMs and all that.
The democratization of podcasting equipment is not great. I mean, I think the problem is that, like, if you go in and you make a podcast about you, it's very good if you're like a celebrity.
Yeah.
But if you make it in cyber, for me, CISOs in cars is all about CISOs.
Yeah.
Which I'm not a CISO, but you are.
Yeah.
And what is your experience? And the biggest thing is, how can you help someone who is maybe not necessarily, in a CISO position today, but they want to get there?
Yeah. So, CISOs come from different pedigrees or different kind of upbringings, right? Some are highly technical. Some come from more of a GRC background.
That's true.
Some come from like deep corporate. Some come from military, or all of the above, right? And so it's really about understanding, what skill sets do you need, and the most important thing is matching up with the organization's needs, right? An organization who's really immature on the GRC side needs that strength, from a CISO in that way. But as you come up, I mean, the certifications, the education, the knowledge, skills, abilities, all that's great. But for me, I had to round out my business acumen. That's why I got my MBA, is because I was already kind of the technical side, but I did not have any of the business acumen. So I went and got that. So know yourself, know what your strengths are, play to those, and then understand your own weaknesses and augment that through, again, education.
Well, that's like a good journey, right? Because you started off super technical, no?
Yeah. I mean, I started in the Marines. I was working on aviation electronics on helicopters, and that parlayed into
crazy,
IT. And then the IT operational side parlayed into more program management and leadership and management in the military and really the DoD. I did 10 years of federal service when cyber became a domain of warfare. So air, land, sea, space, cyber.
So you were part of that?
Yeah, so at that time, at that transition, I was a government employee, and so a lot of doctrine and funding was applied to the way that we approach cybersecurity in the military and within the DoD and the government. So right time, right place in a lot of respects. And then the power of your network, that cannot be understated. Right?
Did you ever work with DIU, Defense Innovation Unit?
The defense
DIU, it's a part of the DoD, but they used to like incubate products and stuff like that.
No. I was with the Military Sealift Command, which is like a logistics arm of the Navy, big Navy.
The Navies, yeah. So it was like an interesting experience, and then somehow you said, "Hey, let's move into the private sector."
So again, power of your network. So I finished out my formal education through my MBA program, and then a guy who was a risk officer at a small bank, $8 billion bank in Florida, reached out to me. He was a friend of mine, and he said, "Hey, we need a CISO." And so I was like, all right. So I made the jump, and it was actually very nerve-wracking. Anybody who's in government, if you've been kind of in that the defense industrial base or in the federal government, and after 10 years, 15 years, switching careers like that is really nerve-wracking.
Yeah.
But you have to trust in yourself and just do it.
But that's the coolest thing, right? You basically did your thing, and you're like, I think I can do this, and then you ended up doing it.
Yeah. And then that bank got bought, or rather, banks aren't bought, banks are sold.
Or they're taken over, you know what I mean?
So it got bought, a bigger bank, and they also needed a CISO at the time, and so I ended up, staying on and going, and then the career kind of went from there, different banks.
But do you believe, like, hey, a lot of things went right for you, or how do you think about that? Because I mean, obviously, it's a journey, right? So everyone always says, "Oh, how do I?" I mean, people sometimes ask me, "Oh, how do I become a CISO?" For example, and I'm like, "Well, I mean, do you know about the risks involved with being a CISO, right? I mean, that's the craziest part these days."
Yeah, for sure. And part of it is, yes, have your vision board, visualize your success in your life, how you want that to be and unfold. That's a huge.
Do you have one
component of it? I have. It's actually a small napkin, so I have some of those laying around the house and in my drawers and things. So I do write down the goals,
like your goals, what you want to accomplish.
Yeah.
Everything. By the way, check out these lights, right? Crazy, huh?
No, they're like
they look good in your glasses. But I love how much you love fashion, man. It's so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, that's so much of what I love as well.
I think it's just ways to express yourself, right?
Yeah.
But you talk about career risk for chief information security officers or technology risk executives in general who are in these roles. A lot of it, like, we don't know what we don't know about the career field. It's a relatively young career field, and there are people now like Tim Brown and Joe Sullivan and others who have been.
You know them?
I do, yeah. I've met with them and hung out with them. Talked with them about because they also didn't realize what kind of career risk.
Yeah. And by the way, I didn't mean career risk as in you shouldn't do it, but more like, hey, this is the risks involved, right?
Well, it's just like being a doctor, right? You're going to have to probably get some sort of malpractice insurance. You're going to have to make sure you're doing things correctly with due care and due diligence. And there's a whole host of things that could still go wrong, even if you do everything perfectly, and somebody's going to blame you.
Sure.
And that's what ends up happening, I think with like, the SEC, like they're coming after, they're naming the CISO, who wasn't the CISO at the time. He was not a named chief information security officer.
He was like after the fact.
Exactly. He was kind of like the most senior guy there.
They're still responsible. What's up with that?
Exactly. That's part of the, I think, as a community, the CISO community, we're trying to figure out, like, what does that really mean now, going forward, and what do we need to do to not only protect ourselves, but we're here to try to protect the organizations, right? We're
funny. It sounds like you really thought about this topic.
I wrote a guide, a career risk guide, working with Cynet and Robert Rodriguez.
But is that for CISO specifically? Or?
It's for technology risk executives.
Okay, cool.
And really, it's once you get to that point where you really are a designated officer of the company, and you're taking on that level of again, career risk and making those decisions. You need to look at, what does my agreement look like, indemnification and limitations of liability. What's in scope of my role? Do I have product security or not? Right? You look at like Progress Software.
Yeah.
That CISO did not have.
Brito?
Yeah.
Okay. He's a great guy. I love him.
Yeah. No, I met him a couple times.
I just met him yesterday.
Nice. Yeah. No, sharp guy. But he didn't have applications or product security under his remit, right?
But then he still gets kind of blamed, or not really blamed, but like sort of responsibility.
That's right. Even though it may not be distinctly articulated in his job description.
So did you like talk to all your friends basically and ask them about this? Is that how it kind of came down? You said that, you did a guide, right? You must talk to everyone?
Yeah, well, not everyone, but I talked with a lot of the CISOs that are part of Cynet, and that's like, Fortune 100, Fortune 500 CISOs, and others who aren't necessarily in that, but they articulated, what are the risks that they encounter? What kind of provisions have they acquired already in their own agreements? And then we try to distill that into something that's tangible. Up to that point, nobody had written down and kind of put it into like list.
But like, what would you say? Like, I like things simple sometimes. I like, if I was going to be a CISO, like, what are the 3 things that I should keep in mind?
Yeah.
If I was the public CISO, or whatever, even if it's non-public.
Yeah.
But what would you say?
The first one is you want to make sure you're a designated officer of the company, right? Just because you're the chief information security officer, it doesn't mean you're an officer of the company.
But why is that so important?
Because then you are covered under directors and officers insurance. So the D&O insurance will cover any named or designated officers of the company and directors. So the board.
So it means like you have to be written into the document.
That particular title has to be named and covered. Okay. Maybe not you by name, but the title has to be. Got it. And then normally you do have a board resolution that says so-and-so is designated as the in that role.
So they write chief information security officer?
Yes. And that's the thing. Like every company is going to be a little different, and every D&O policy is going to have different language, and you have to understand what that looks like and get that in writing.
Yeah.
So again, a well-defined role, so what's in scope, what's in your scope of authority and responsibility, what you're accountable for. Being the named officer. So
that's number 1. Yeah. Be a named officer. Number 2,
you want to look at again the specifics under your agreement. So you want to try to get indemnification and limitations of liability. You want that coverage so that
like you have to customize your offer letter.
Well, you want to, and that's what's in the guide, is trying to share with the reader. Here are the things you want to try to work into your employment agreement or your offer letter, so that articulates what those things are.
Number 3,
probably separation and severance. I've heard a lot of stories where just for political reasons, maybe there's a change and they want to let you go, which is fine.
So what is this? So what do you recommend people negotiate for severance?
Well, you want probably at least 12. You want to start with probably 12 months of interest. What am I saying? 12 months of salary, and you want to, if you have any equity, you want that to have an accelerated vesting.
Oh, if you,
so that they don't, kind of cut you
a single trader, basically.
Yeah, and so it's really about understanding what is on the table and what are the pieces that you can actually move around, and what can you do? And I think that was what was missing. A lot of CISOs don't know what they don't know about career.
He was taking pictures.
So,
But yeah, so I think I love those three things because this is a way for someone to go in and think about it differently, because this is not necessarily you're becoming a CISO tomorrow. It's also if you're already a CISO, I think everyone should probably remember that this is not necessarily the way it was 10 years ago, but today you have to keep these three things in mind.
That's right. And you can still negotiate, either retention agreements or other kinds. If you're an incumbent CISO, and
I mean, you can post negotiate too, right?
That's right. And
definitely negotiation. I think these are must-haves.
Yeah.
The DNO thing, I agree with completely. I mean, I have it for myself, but then but ultimately, if the person, it's not really about you getting, I guess, sued by the company per se, but it's like if some outside entity.
Exactly. And that's what's occurring, whether it be the SEC for a civil or criminal suit, could be, the government. It could be an individual based on maybe you had a data breach and now you're being sued and you're being named in a lawsuit. Certainly those things could.
I mean, see, this is why, for me, I'm not a CISO.
Yeah.
I'm a product builder.
Yeah.
And honestly, I've been into cybersecurity. And there's different versions, right? So people say, oh, I'm in cyber, then they'll send me a risk company. And I'm like, well, that's not what I do. But there's many areas of cyber, right?
Yeah.
And I am, for instance, I'm a product manager through and through.
Yeah.
Right? People always say but I mean, my background's engineering, but that doesn't mean that I know how to run a cybersecurity program.
And that's the difference. For sure, because you're looking at it from one particular viewpoint. We have to look at it at the layers of defense.
Yeah.
The data layer, the application layer, the network layer, perimeter, cloud. We're looking at all the layers and all the tools that come together to create your information security program holistically, the people, the processes, and the technologies, and how those all interoperate and work together. And then we're trying to achieve a certain level of, posture, of a defensive posture, and reducing risk and reducing the likelihood of a breach. That's really the name of the game. No CISO is going to be 100% able to prevent a data breach or prevent the bad thing from happening. But there's certainly like some basic pillars and due care and due diligence we have to do in our role as professionals. And if we're doing that and we still have a data breach, you're still going to be held liable.
Yeah. But then that's where your limitation of liability and the separation agreement, and then also last but not least, the last one you mentioned. What was the last one? The DNO insurance.
The DNO, yeah. Because again, you can do everything right, and
and then still get
popped. Exactly. So
get popped, baby.
Yeah, that's right.
But this is so interesting because this is what allows people to just, like you just said, look, I talked to 10, 15 people, let's just say 20, 30 people, and this is what they recommended.
Yeah.
But really, that's what you're saying right now.
Yeah, we distilled it down to like 10 things to look at.
Did you write it yourself?
Yeah. I put it together, and then we had some folks jump in and start editing it and add some commentary and comments, and we worked those in. And now I'm working on version 2. Again, it's on the Signet website.
Yeah.
But
I think everyone should definitely check it out. It sounds interesting for sure.
Yeah. So I'm on LinkedIn as well.
So there's we talked about that, but then you briefly mentioned that there's different types of, I mentioned actually that there's different types of areas of cyber and different roles or responsibility. Like I'm building a product and you're using and consuming that product.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's RSA, which we're about to pass by right now, which is going to be a zoo, which is amazing. But that's not necessarily the RSA that you and I are in, right?
Right, yeah. I was saying there's really 2 RSAs, right? There's all the happenings in the Moscone Center, all the vendors and the booths and the sessions, which is fantastic. And then there's a lot happening outside of Moscone, right?
Yeah.
And that's the interactions like we're having. That's the interactions with our
that's the best part about RSA, right? Is that you get a chance, we all get a chance to connect. And honestly, I prefer to meet people in person personally, because that's how you get to know me, I get to know you. But most importantly, this is the only way that we get to interact like this, right? Is at RSA.
That's right. And again, the strength of your network, right? So it's critical that you begin to make those connections, and it's part of that trust, right? We always talk about digital trust, but it's all a relationship business at the end of the day still. Right?
True.
And so that's what I like.
This is cool though. It's cool. I love it. This is my 10th year coming here.
Wow. Nice.
And I think every year I come to RSA, and people always ask me oh, how did you do this, or why did you do it like this? Why don't you have we don't have a booth presence, for example. But honestly, we're not at the stage to have a booth. We're not as big as CrowdStrike, for example. We can have a booth, but when we have a booth, it's gonna be a fashion show.
That's right.
It's gonna be crazy.
Nice. Yeah. No, I think you have a lot. You're taking a different marketing approach, right? You're taking not quite guerrilla marketing, but kind of, right? You're kind of flipping it on its head. You're not necessarily following the same path.
Correct.
And I think that's important to do, right?
Yeah, and think for me, when we build as a company, it's about the vibe, right? If you have an identity, for example, as where you came from, which is a public sector, kind of like a completely different world.
Yeah.
And then you brought it here, then you bring that experience and thought process and leadership qualities, which I will never have, for example, because I wasn't in the military, for example.
Yeah,
but that's okay.
You don't have to have that pedigree or that background.
But it's okay, because then you're bringing your world into the world. And then I'm also, like, my background is into shooting videos, which you can clearly tell with all the lights and everything, like, in editing and this and that, and then that comes into the cyber world as well.
That's the core of diversity, right? Having people from many walks of life who think differently, who approach problems with different angles and different, again, based on their experience, based on, all their, the accumulation of all their life experience, right? And you want that diversity of, if everybody thinks the same way, if I have a room, 10 military personnel looking at the same problem, they're all going to think in the same way.
Yeah.
If I get people from different cultures, different backgrounds, different skill sets, you're going to have a far more likelihood that you're going to solve that problem, more effectively.
And I think that, like, that background differentiation, or I would say like that uniqueness factor, is actually really cool, because if you think about yourself, you're bringing something unique there. And then, like, even if you were in the CISO perspective, but what if you were like in marketing, for example? I was talking to one of my friends, her experience is in the channel, right? Like, she's really good with all these different channel partners, and she's like, oh, I'm trying to think about, like, what I'm going to do next.
Yeah. And
we're like talking about it, and she's like, oh, I just, like, don't want to be just like a, because she's like, nah, it doesn't feel like, oh, maybe I would be a CRO. But I was like, well, have you ever considered thinking about taking your experience into the CMO role, for example?
Yeah.
Because that's a completely different thinking, because you can have an expertise, but you can bring a very sales and channel focus. And really, cybersecurity, this is one of the craziest things, is it's completely channel driven.
Yeah. Like,
what channel partners do you work with?
So you're talking about like
bars and stuff like that?
Yeah, like we have GuidePoint.
So GuidePoint's great.
Is a great one out I'm in Miami, so
yeah.
They have regions.
Yeah.
The ones I've worked with is out in Florida.
People swear by GuidePoint, by the way. Like,
yeah, no, they're great.
Why do you? I think people sometimes ask me, because they're like, in especially the younger founders that aren't in cyber for so long. So I always ask you, why do you work with a channel partner?
So, like, for instance, I did a deal working with Clarium, who's also based in Miami.
Mm-hmm.
We bought a network detection response tool called WireX, and Clarium helped.
Shout out to them.
That's right. and they helped us. They helped facilitate all of the
paperwork,
not just the paperwork and documentation, but on the front end, the requirements gathering. They understood what our challenges, what problems we're trying to solve.
Got it.
And help put that into more of a structured RFP. So when you do a request for information or a request for proposals, you want somebody who can help you, facilitate that, and it goes way quicker. Yeah, I could use ChatGPT, but having somebody, through GuidePoint.
They probably used it.
That's right. Good. But somebody who's from Clarium or GuidePoint or right to the VARs that you work with, they're like, hey, that's the value add they bring.
Nice.
And they have their own engineers who tell you, this is how we see a product working together and stitching into your fabric.
Your overall thing, yeah. So then, okay, great. So you don't want to do that yourself, or your team? You don't want your team to do that, or why? I guess I'm just trying to understand. Like,
if I have my director of engineering or security operations or GRC or access management, I mean, they come from their one viewpoint, right?
Yeah.
And so they may not be able to consider, and I may not have the time necessarily to craft the whole thing, but
this helps them. So there is a value that they're providing to you as well.
For sure. And some they just want a PO and they're just going to be a pass through. That's not a value add reseller. That's just a reseller. And some organizations, they don't sell directly. They go through VARs. Right?
So the reason why we only sell through VARs.
Yeah.
But the reason why we do that is because it gives you an economy of scale.
Yeah.
Because when
reach.
Yeah. I mean, you can go in, and when for example, one of our biggest deals went through GuidePoint. Like, they made their commission, but ultimately, like, because of that one deal, a bunch of other people found out about Dope as well.
That's right. And so from your angle, coming in through a VAR, you got a different kind of value prop.
Correct.
My value prop is it saves me time and money, and I'm getting their expertise.
So there is it's like a buyer's agent and seller's agent, right? Technically of a house, right? Like, you have an agent, we have an agent, happen to be the same person.
That's right.
And they basically help us connect to each other.
That's right.
Which is fair, makes sense.
Yeah. So and it expands your network. It's a whole thing. Yep.
So I guess, like, the real crazy thing really is going to be, like, how it's going to change. I think that the VAR ecosystem, channel ecosystem, is not just here to stay, but it's going to become more and more prevalent over time. Because there's so many companies, how do you know who to talk to?
That's right. That's 100% right. I think the danger, though, is that, what incentivizes GuidePoint to elevate, Dope as a product versus another product, right?
So the way that I've seen it work, there's a guy named Nathan there. So Nathan is one of their, he doesn't like to be called a salesperson.
Yeah.
He's like an architect, so he's very technical.
Yeah.
But I would say Nathan is a big believer in dope from day one.
Yeah.
You know, he followed us, and then when George joined, then he got to know each other, and then, you know, we were in business, you know? And that concept of like putting it together, that's what made it actually happen. Otherwise, there's no way, right? I mean, like, how would it even work?
Right, and you can have the products speak for themselves, right?
Yeah.
The proof is always in the pudding, and if your product is good, it's going, you know, it should rise above the fray. But you need channel partners, other partners, and ways to get that messaging out, and you know, guerrilla marketing, right, and other methods, so that you have that reach. You know?
Correct. And I think that that's where, like, if you don't do that, if you didn't do that, then you wouldn't get that reach. But like you said, right? I mean, you have to make sure that you're able to actually, you know, catch their attention. And, you know, one of the sales guys at Symantec once told me this. He said, you know, there's so many products at Symantec, you almost have to sell to the salespeople to be able for them to take on your product.
Yeah.
Very simple. And if you don't do that, then you won't be successful. And I was like, dude, that's so true. But we take it to another level. If you think about it with like a guide point or whatever, it's like, unless you can sell to the reseller, they're not going to be successful.
Right. And a lot of times they expect you to kind of bring a deal or be ready to kind of show that already. So yeah, you can imagine they're getting inundated too by.
And that is where somehow you stand out or whatever it might be. But look, I mean, honestly, I don't know. Sometimes when I think about success, like, or for us, that's been a very successful partnership. But like, the biggest thing is like two people have two interesting things to say to each other, like we do, right? Like we hang out, we're chilling, we got dinner, whatever. It doesn't necessarily have to be like there's if it's too much give or too much take, then it never works out, right?
Sure.
And we get that a lot sometimes, right? Like, I mean, even personally, right? You might have a friend who's just like, oh, and talks your ear out. You just don't like enjoying talking to them.
It could, same thing in work relationships and personal relationships, you know, all those. But if you can connect on that human level, right?
Then it makes more sense.
It makes everything way smoother. Again, the product has to be good. There's a lot of, you know, kind of vaporware out there, or like, you know, snake oil. You got to be mindful of that. But you know, like I said, it all shakes out during like the proof of value, proof of concept phases, right? POC, or people get to use the product and put their hands on it.
Correct.
Often understated is the UI, the whole.
Dude, my biggest thing is UI.
Yeah, UX is
amazing.
Yep.
But like, I think that the reason why I think it has to be critical as UX is because I think like the Gen 1 of cyber was these on-prem solutions, right? Very difficult to deploy, but you know, you deploy them. And in a way, like a firewall has become easier to deploy, for example.
Yeah.
Like, but over time, you know, it's evolves. And then
you want to reduce the learning curve, right, for your new platform. You want to make it intuitive and easy to use, especially if it's a product that's being used in incident response. You don't want people to be like, oh, where's that button? How do I do this next task?
Or I mean, but see, I think it's like, in IR is one example, but that's like a critical example. But just to make it more simple, is that right now, if you're the CISO of a 1,000 or even a 200-person company, or even a 20,000-person company, why would you want them to get specialized training for a cyber product? I mean, that's wild.
Well, I mean, you're going to need to obviously know specifics about the product, but it should not be this
so complicated,
that you can't just figure it out, you know.
So there's Gen 1, which is on-prem. There's Gen 2, which is kind of like a hosted model, but still like not so great UI or design or anything like that. And then there's Gen 3, which is what I believe dope is, where we make things like as easy as possible with the best UX and design you can imagine.
Yeah.
So that overall kind of evolution, let's call it, is important.
No, I totally agree. It goes down to, you know, what was the focus early on, right? And it was about the tool. Does it work? Can we get it out in the market? Can we get buyers, right? And now we're seeing there's a discerning buyer who wants to be they want to be useful and usable by their employees. Yeah.
No, of course. And I think that like this evolution is much needed. But that's what we are doing, right?
Yeah.
Like Jeff, do you know Jeff Moore? He used to be CISO of Staples. Now he's at CISO of Gap.
Okay, yeah.
So he did this thing, and he was like, you know, Kunal, you don't really innovate very much. I'm like, damn, hurtful. But then he was like, oh, well, I mean, it's fair, right? You're like, I'm not really innovating that much. You just had a proxy once on-prem. You have a proxy in your data center. No, we're like, hey, you gotta do it on your device instead.
Exactly. And that, I think, again, I watched that episode. He talked about the evolution.
So there was a box. There's no more box, you know?
Yeah.
So,
but that's the evolution of it, right? Again, multiple capabilities or features coming together into a single platform. Is that innovation? Maybe not, but it definitely is a step that makes people's lives easier, and it might, it reduces my tech stack or
whatever,
reduces complexity in my organization. We always hear complexity is the enemy of security.
Yeah.
So anytime you're helping, it's iterative, right? That iterative approach is just as important as the major breakthroughs and leaps.
Fair. And what's like? I mean, if you're gonna say what's the breakthrough, what's like your favorite product you've seen so far?
Well,
I mean, let's just say this past 6 to 12 months.
I think that
besides dope, obviously that's number one.
Besides dope. But I think, okay, so if I take products aside and I think about more like the capabilities, you're starting to, obviously AIs everywhere, LLMs, people can't say it enough times, right?
Yeah.
But it's how do you make that technology integrated into your product that makes my life easier or my team's life easier, quicker, faster, better, all those things. And that I think is what's going to be a real shift in the
But I have a hot take on that. Okay. I think creating like a chat AI thing is so dumb.
That's not even remotely what I'm referring to.
No, I'm just saying. I'm just saying because
totally right.
People that are like, oh, I use LLM, and you do a search query. I'm like, dude, if you're an actual like SOC analyst,
right?
You really think they don't know how to use SQL?
Right. And you think they want to chat with?
I mean, seriously.
No. I think again, it's going to be more about intuitive, contextual understanding, and then anticipating the needs. And you're going to get to the point where those things are going to do a lot of those jobs automatically. You need human in the loop if you're going to, block something or do some detonations, right? But otherwise, I mean, I think that all those tools, it's a lot of hype right now. And as they get smarter and they integrate them better within their platforms, not just a chatbot, you're going to see a major shift in the adoption of these technologies. And again, the tier 0, the tier 1, even the tier 2 SOC analysts might start going away.
This whole thing, right?
But you still have to.
Oh my gosh, look what's happening here. And I shouldn't go this way. But yeah, I mean, that's the whole thing, right? I mean, like, if I'm using an LLM, like this, right? When we use an LLM for DLP, everyone was like, I would say that was a customer. They were like, maybe we should do something of what's that, man? But he was like, maybe that's gonna be a risk. People won't want to do that. It's like, oh, it's private or whatever. And I thought to myself, I was like, you might think that, but using an LLM to do DLP on your sensitive data is actually the best possible way to do it.
Yeah.
So you might say, hey, this company doesn't want to do it, but that's okay. You're only one of 100 companies. There's another 99 that'll use it just fine. They get value out of it.
Well, I think the nervousness around that is is my query or my data going to be consumed elsewhere, right?
Yeah. Everyone waves and says that.
And I think that's the biggest, it's a privacy concern, right? But if you can put those fences and guardrails.
My mom is here. That's my mom. I was like, Mom, I'm just recording something. I'll be back, okay?
Hi, Mom.
This is my friend.
Hi.
I'm recording. I'll be back, okay?
No, that's fine.
Okay, bye. Bye. I'm on the cat.
Don't worry. We are here.
Okay, bye, Mom. Oh my gosh, that's
one small world.
Oh god, she's so funny.
That's great.
But yeah, I mean, I think like that's where.
That's so funny.
That's actually so funny.
All right, so again, the AI integration. So again, if my
reason for DLP, but it's fine, right?
But if my query and my data is going to be, in the big bad cloud, and it's going to be power enough.
Yeah.
Okay. If it's going to be, big bad cloud and it's consumed and now it's retained and trained on by other people, that's what people are concerned about. When you can put those guardrails around.
You make it secret, right? You don't use the data to train. Very simple.
Use it in a private environment. I mean, there's lots of
ways to
do that.
So what I'll tell you is like, I think that's insane. And I think like for me, I'm super thankful for like meeting you and getting to know you, because I think you have a good view on this stuff, and I'm going to share that article that you wrote and everything like that. But like, what would you say for like anyone's out there that wants to be like you one day?
Don't be like me. Be yourself, for sure.
That's beautiful.
Everyone, it's like a unique, blooming flower. Right? Your own beauty and what you bring to the table is going to come from deep down within, and you're going to assimilate all this information, and your approach to cyber or your approach to your work, should be unique to you. But I think again, understanding your strengths and weaknesses, so know thyself, right?
Yeah.
And grow your network, right? I think that's really important.
So important.
And just be part of the conversation. That's the thing. It can seem a little like too much of a fray sometimes on social media or LinkedIn or whatever. But that's, have a unique opinion. Put yourself out there. Be that when you think about thought leadership, right? What they're really referring to is somebody who's willing to,
put themselves out there, right?
Yeah, stand up to the criticism. They might get criticized, they might get applauded, right? And that's okay.
Yeah.
But you got to have an opinion, have an informed opinion. Communicate, share. Be open to changing your opinion. I may have an opinion on something,
but that's okay to change it, right?
Yes,
exactly.
Totally. If someone's like, "Hey, have you thought about this angle or this information about this type of topic?" My ability to adapt my thought process and to change my mind is actually a good thing. In fact, I think all of society needs to be better at synthesizing new information and changing their
old mindset to new mindset.
Right.
But dude, first off, thank you so much.
Yeah,
I'm looking forward to party with you in Miami someday.
Yeah.
Let's do it. And with that, man, see you next time.
Bye, everybody.